You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Good evening and welcome to episode 118 of the podcast as our revisiting of division rankings continues. We're going to be chatting about the Central Division in this episode. Cody Abrams and Melbourne joining you as always. Guys, how we doing?
Pretty good, Hart. Pretty chill weekend. Just, some hikes here and there, and then a lot of watching of the players, like a lot of sitting on the couch watching golf. It was no complaints there. Absolutely love it. I put a lot of different bets down and a lot of chances to make a lot of money. Probably not going to hit on any of them. Like, I have, I think, 6 golfers to win outright, and none of them are going to win. I made a very early bet on Justin Thomas. I think it's a pretty smart bet. I think it was like $5 gets me $250. So I was like, why wouldn't you on the 8th best golfer in the world, like ranked? I also had Joaquin Niemann, the Panamanian guy there, Dustin Johnson, Victor Hovland, and Paul Casey all to win outright. I don't think any of them are going to do it now. So whatever. They're all like $5 and $1 bets to return like $200.
Yeah, might as well swing for the fences if you're trying to, recoup some dollars there on Bet365.
It does make it a little more exciting. Like, I like watching golf any day, but when you're rooting for like guys to win you money, it's even more excited. And LVB is also in a fantasy league for the golf, so he tells me every weekend who we're rooting for, and it actually happened to be Justin Thomas this weekend, who's my favorite golfer, so that worked out.
Nice. I cannot wait to golf this summer, guys. Like, I was talking with Adam the other day while we were playing some NHL, and we're just going back and forth like, I want to do this summer, get my handicap to X, and I'm gonna practice this many times a week and whatever. And
man, I'm wearing a long sleeve right now, if you're looking at the video, because I actually clawed all the skin off of my arms because I had the itch all weekend.
You've got the bug, eh? And man, like, me too, I'm ready. I haven't been to a simulator all winter, so I'm just excited. We've got some nice weather, and so we record at 5:30 every Monday. Normally I'm in a dark ass room, but clocks changed, and right now it's bright out, so you can actually see me in my room and stuff. So that just means we're getting closer and closer to summer, closer to golf season, and I could not be happier for that. But back to hockey, guys. This weekend could have gone a little bit better. Obviously, there was the outdoor game between the Leafs and the Sabres. And Hart, before I pass it to you, I just want to ask the question, did we see the outcome of this game going any other way than the Sabres winning? Because as a Leafs fan, no. It was just, the writing was already on the wall 2 years ago or whenever, when they announced that this game was going to be taking place, that the Sabres were going to smoke the Leafs, and they did. And now they're up 2-1 in the season series. So I could be doing better, but all in all, it's a good day to have a day. Harp, how's it going, man?
Well, I'm just peachy. I mean, proud to be a Sabres fan, and this is probably the best, most positive week for this hockey team in forever. You beat the Golden Knights in Eichel's return. They just drive them right out of the building, and then the comments afterwards and just that whole storyline. And then they go into the outdoor game in Hamilton and beat the Leafs, and that was great too. So doing really great and proud of the team, and just in a great mood. But Chad, sorry about the game for your Leafs there. And as we were talking about off air, just again the goaltending issue and all of that, that one goal by Hinostroza on Mrazek, that just can't go in, man. And so when you look at plays in the game that were backbreakers, that is certainly one that you look at. But
it's funny. Peter Mrazek, the first time he was actually standing in the net in 15 games, he let that in. I was so blown away. Usually, when he's getting scored on, he's standing in the corner, or he's out at the dot or something like that.
There was one save that Mrazek made that the broadcast went pretty nuts about, and it was a big glove save, and it looked
on
good.
Middlestad, that one,
Yeah, and it looked good, but then, you look at it for more than half a second and you realize that was created because Mrazek's right pad, this happened on his left side, so to his glove side post. His right pad was the only thing covering that post in the net when the shooter was in the middle, and then he comes back and makes a glove save on that left side, and it's like, man, you created that for yourself. Like, you're just not in position. And the Leafs are going to end up getting saves as we go on. But you guys will notice I'm growing out my beard here a little bit. And I think I'm going to keep doing this until Peter Mrazek posts a showing where he has an over 900 save percentage. So maybe I might be growing it for a while.
Poor Paige. You're going to look like Brent Burns soon.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, let's get into episode 118 here. So before we get into our chat about the Central Division, let's go into a little fantasy corner. So, Case, let's start with you and recapping the last week for fantasy for you.
Yeah, I actually had a bye week this week. I was playing Irving, or Brandon's team. So yeah, basically a bye week, but I decided, why not throttle last place? You can't sign into his count anyways. I got the second most points in the league. Not a surprise at all. I get more points than anyone but Chad on a regular basis, and I get scored on more than anyone. Let me just keep hammering that point home when you look at me in 9th place. But I've strung together 3 wins here. I'm hoping for another win. This week's a big one for me. I'll be in a playoff spot. If a couple things go well. So yeah, big week here, but last week was a cakewalk.
Last week for me was definitely not a cakewalk. I squeaked out a victory over the Bacchus Door Bandits, but I'll ask the same question about fantasy that I did talking about the Leafs and Sabres games, boys. Could you have predicted any other outcome than a multiple scoregasms win in the Boys in the Booth Fantasy League? No, you couldn't, because it happens every week except for 3. And so I have to say that every week, boys. I have to shit on you a bit, because come playoff time, I feel like, I'm like this team over here, the Maple Leafs, where who knows, I might have the best regular season in the history of regular seasons, but who knows what will happen come playoff time. So I'm trying to stay a bit humble, but boys, my team is so good, and it's just going to keep getting better as guys continue to perform. So top 3 teams right now have clinched playoff spots. That's me, Danbury Trashers, and the Meatheads. After that, Case, as you alluded to, the playoff race is absolutely wide open, and it's going to be so exciting to see who beats me in the first round then. Harp, how about you, man? How's your fantasy going?
Well, no surprise, another L last week for the Pepsi Cup scoring champs, and 201 to 188. So, not bad, not a complete blowout, but still a bit of a decent margin there between the two, and that was to Will Nye the Science Guy. So, Chad, that's another Toronto buddy of yours, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We were at the Arizona game together last week.
Okay, so that's Kiriakou then. Jeez, I'm sorry.
No. So I was with Remy and John and my buddy Quentin. But yeah, so Remy is the guy who you played.
Right.
Also was on the podcast, Harper. I don't know.
Yes,
also,
course.
What the hell, Harper? He was. We had a whole discussion. You know what it was? It's because we were talking about numbers and his model and math, and Harper just tuned out, right? Like that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Well, Remy, if you're listening, I apologize, and congrats on the win last week. But anyway, Patrick Kane was really my standout guy. He had 10 points and was great. But yeah, still the L there. But I'm feeling pretty good going into this week because our friend, Mr. Morel, doesn't like to set his lineups. He hasn't all season, mail order brides, and so got a good chance to beat him this week. So looking forward to this week in fantasy.
I'm putting $5 on Corey.
He's made a couple moves, so my money's there too.
He's been busy.
He has stepped it up a little bit. So might not be a cake, like it's going to be close. It's going to be a close matchup. So. yeah, hopefully I can win. But yeah, no, thanks for the vote of confidence, guys. Appreciate it. All right, let's get into our conversation about the Central Division as our revisiting of the division rankings that we had before the start of the season continues. So yeah, let's get into the Central. So the standings that we had them projected out to be before the start of the season, we had Colorado at number 1, Winnipeg at 2, Dallas at 3, then Minnesota at 4, Chicago at 5, St. Louis in 6th, Nashville in 7th, and Arizona in 8th. So let's start with the Colorado Avalanche, and that's an easy one. I mean, that goes without saying that they were projected to be the number 1 team, and no surprise, they're the number 1 team in this division and one of the best teams in the National Hockey League, looking like a Stanley Cup contender as expected. So, Case, start us off with talking about the Colorado Avalanche, and we'll go into where we were right and where we were wrong with each team. So let's start with the Avalanche, Case.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be pretty quick about this one because talking about these guys, we kind of nailed it. I mean, we said that they were going to be the top team. It was their division to lose here. And we said, top team in this division, but maybe not the number 1 team in the league. So far, we're wrong about that, but it is close for sure. And you never know what's going to happen in these last 22 games. Yeah, I mean, what can't you say about this team? Like, you've got that top line that's absolutely incredible. You've got the D-core that's one of the best in the league. You have the best scoring defenseman in the league. You have a second-line center that's come out of absolutely nowhere and blown up for you in Kadri. So as long as he doesn't get suspended in the playoffs, he's an absolute stud this year. It's like everything's going right for this team so far. Even the officiating seems to be like so heavily for them. I saw a post on Instagram the other day that was like, I forget who it was. Oh, Samuel Girard is going to miss this game due to injury, so we've given the Colorado Avalanche a 10-goal advantage. They started the game 10-0 against Carolina. I'm like, yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, not much else I want to say about this team. They're exactly where they belong.
Yeah, and we were right about this team, and we were also right about Carolina. What am I doing? Arizona. I don't know where that even came from, guys. But so we were right about Colorado. We were right about Arizona for sure at 1 and 8. And then, like we said, dating back to our first episode when we talked about the Central Division back in the preseason, we basically said, listen, all the teams in the middle, that's up for grabs. Like, we don't know what's going to happen for teams 2 through 7. And that's kind of how this division has shaken out so far. So, Colorado, we were right. They didn't start the season very well, though. And there wasn't much panic about that. But there was some chatter about maybe Colorado isn't the best team in the league, because I think they started 3-7 or something like that. But of course, this team has been incredible since then. Kadri, like you said, Case, has been unbelievable, and everything's going right for them. They've got a really good, underrated offensive defenseman. Not talking about Cale Makar. Everyone knows he's very good. I'm talking about Taves. He's been a point per game this year, which has been incredible for them. The only thing that's difficult for this team right now, and I don't even know if it's a difficulty anymore in the cap world, is that Gabe Landeskog is going to miss some time. He requires surgery. And so does that mean they go out and get Claude Giroux? Like, does that make this team better?
I saw every comment on that announcement that he's missing time. It was like, oh, we're doing a Tampa. Everyone's fired up about it. It's like you lose one of your best players and your captain, and everyone's a little excited because it means LTIR. So.
I hate it, man. And when Muzzin went down for the Leafs, same thing. I was like, this is good. Like, we can get whoever. But then now you're seeing, sometimes like good teams can afford to do that, like Tampa, but sometimes they leave a big hole when you lose a big player like that. But anyways, we're right on Colorado is the point here.
For sure. And I think this is very small, but like maybe where we went wrong with this team was like, okay, they had a slow start and we maybe weren't sure about Darcy Kemper, but he's been fantastic since that low start to the season. And I think we kind of, at least I did, if you guys can remember, kind of questioned the bottom 6 depth offensively for this team, right? We kind of question that, but they kind of just get it done by committee. And what has helped is, obviously that top line is ridiculous, but what has helped is, like you mentioned, Case, how good Kadri has been. And but yeah, like they're getting it done by committee in the bottom six, which is where, my concern kind of was, because they lost guys like Belmar and Donskoy, those two in particular, but guys that kind of fly under the radar, like Obe Kubel and O'Connor and Jost, and some of these guys just help out in the bottom six. And so those were really the only two concerns with this team. But yeah, we were right about them, and no surprise there.
Yeah, we talked briefly about some of the guys they lost in the offseason, and that's what we wanted to hit on was, who's going to replace the roles of Ryan Graves and of Brandon Saad, and there's others I'm forgetting, but
yeah,
there's guys that have stepped up, and that's exactly what the team needs, so they got it.
For sure. All right, let's go into who we had at number 2, and it's been an up and down year for the Winnipeg Jets, and so we had them at number 2. They're 6th in the Central Division right now. Of course, I picked them to have a strong second half of the season a little while back, and it's just been very up and down with this team. They've been through a lot. Paul Maurice resigned earlier in the season, and they've been through a lot. So, Case, let's get your thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets, where we were right and where we were wrong.
Yeah, we were very wrong about this team. That's for sure. We all had them at second, and in this division, there's we're way off, but at the same time, 2 swaps, and we're pretty nail on. If you swap the Blues and the Jets where we had them, nailed it, perfect. But the Jets, man, such a streaky team. At one time they lost 6 in a row, and then they'll go on a little bit of a heater where they win, let's say 5 out of 9 or whatever it is, and 2 overtime losses. They start rolling, and then they lose a bunch of games in a row. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's wrong with this team, and honestly, I can't figure it out. They're so middle of the pack in everything, I guess.
Yeah.
The start of the season was definitely what hurt them the most, and there was a lot of guys that simply were not clicking for them at the beginning of the season. Shifley had a tough start to the season. Wheeler had a god awful start to the season. I think it took him 30 games to score a goal. Mm-hmm. Some of your big guys weren't clicking at the beginning of the season, and that just dug a hole for them, and now that's where they are. And they're middle of the standings in goals for, goals against, power play, penalty kill. It's everything. So I look at the team and I look at their roster, and I'm like, this looks good to me. I don't really get it. You have Kyle Connor on a career year. You have Dubois playing the best he's played as a Jet, yet you can't get it done. So definitely frustrating. We talked about early in the season when we did the rankings, Hellebuck saying, we're at the end of our window here. We need to make a push, and not getting it done.
No.
Yeah, this is a team, guys, that, similar to when we talked about Vancouver last episode, we looked at this team on paper and thought, this is good. They're going to be good. They're going to improve from last season. They're going to, gel more as a team with the, incorporation of Dubois now in a full season. And it just really hasn't worked. And last year, I think we had a conversation about, the gap closing between Kyle Connor and Nick Ehlers, and something I've been very disappointed with this year is Nick Ehlers' production, because he's been, in and out of the lineup because he's been hurt throughout the season, so that never helps. But he's got just 30 points now in roughly 40 games, and so coming from a guy who is capable of being a point per game player, it's just sort of disappointing. And then on the other side of things, you've got Connor, like you said, who's having a career year. So it's they kind of went in opposite directions when we thought the gap was closing between the two. So that's kind of unfortunate to see. Another thing too is, and we knew this going into the season, and maybe this played a factor into why we ranked them at number 2, but we knew that Hellebuck is one of the best goalies in the NHL, and he's been really good this season. I did a post yesterday on Boys in the Booth, and Hellebuck was ranked right now on Money Puck 11th in goals saved above expected, which, he's been there all year. He's been top 10 or in and around. But his last, 4 starts or so haven't been great. He's been kind of streaking with the team as well, up and down. So it's tough when you win and lose and live and die with your goaltender. Like, it's tough to be a competitive team if that guy's struggling. So I don't know. The Jets are better than this, but I don't know if next year when we do this ranking, we can put them in second or in the top 3.
I think the real unfortunate thing for Winnipeg, maybe this is the real reason, is there's more surprises in this division, good surprises, than any other division.
Yeah.
Well, Pacific's a little up there, but, the Blues are shocking. Nashville's shocking. The Stars are kind of better, but not as good as we thought that they were going to be. There's a lot going on in this division, and it's missing Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, before the start of the season, like, it would have been safe to say that this is the best team in Canada. Like, am I completely off there? Or
yes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so,
You forgot about Toronto, Harp.
Yeah, no, I know.
The mecca of the hockey universe.
I knew I was gonna get a hard time for that, but no, I mean, like, you look at this team on paper, and it's like Florida all those years. Like, they're good on paper, and they're just not able to have success and take it to that next level. And so we've been hearing this a lot, but I think it's true. You just wonder if things have just gone a little bit stale with the Jets, and if some big changes need to happen. We'll see what happens with Andrew Kopp. His name has been out there quite a bit as the deadline approaches. We're a week away as we're recording this. But I looked at the roster and they improved the back end, as we mentioned before on the pod here, with bringing guys like Dillon and Schmidt and they've got the core there and the guys that can produce offensively, but it just hasn't worked, and they've been through a lot again this year. The past couple of years, honestly, have been a lot for the Jets. Like, you look at the whole Byfuglien situation, and you look at Paul Maurice, resigning and everything, and not exactly the greatest place to play either. Mm-hmm. Right, like when you look at markets in the NHL, so just there's been a lot, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But certainly did not expect this team to be as low as 6th.
If they were to blow it up, and like, I'm not saying they even should, because I think they have the pieces to still be good. But if they were to blow it up, they could build a dynasty with like 25 first-round picks, because they would get a ton for all the players they have on their roster now.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to send Hellebuck out, there's a first plus. Connor, 2 firsts or equivalent. Same with Ehlers. Like, I don't know. I'm just looking at it. You might get a first for Kopp. So, like,
yeah, he's played well. He's another guy. Like, Case mentioned Dubois, and Kopp is another guy as well. He's a big part of that team. So,
dude,
anyway.
If you did it at the right time, Chad, you'd get like 4 firsts for Kyle Connor.
I know.
You got, for Blake Coleman, the Devils got a first-round pick and a guy who was drafted the first round a year ago. Yeah. Like, if Blake Coleman can get that, Kyle Connor's getting 4 firsts. Yeah. You have 4 firsts for Scheifele. How many firsts for Ehlers? They just blew it up. They're playing GM mode. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Sick, but I don't see it. And obviously not happening.
No.
And Cole Perfetti, big part of their future. He's looked really good as well. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Jets, but definitely a surprise that they're as low as 6th. The Dallas Stars, we'll move on to them now, guys. So, 3rd in the division is where we had them before the season started, and we're not too far off. They're down into 5th spot right now, a point behind Vegas for that second wild card spot. Jason Robertson, Joe Pavelski, Rupe Hintz, I mean, they've been the drivers. Jake Ottinger's been excellent as well. Dallas has been, a pretty hot team lately. So let's talk about the Stars.
The problem with the Stars this season is that they just lost Heiskanen for the rest of the year, and it comes in a season where John Klingberg, their other really good offensive defenseman, has not been very good. So, there's been a lot of talk about moving Klingberg, and like if this isn't going to be this team's, final push with this, I don't even know if you can call it a core anymore with Ben and Sagan, because they're not even the most prominent players on the team anymore. But if it's going to be, sort of a final push with this group, and they realize that they're not going to be able to make the playoffs, or they're going to fall outside because they just lost their best defenseman, then maybe the time is right to sell Klingberg if he's not going to re-sign. I don't know. But it's funny that we looked at this team going into the season and we thought, okay, their goaltending, phenomenal. And this season, their goaltending has been pretty good, but it's been from different guys who we just didn't expect to be playing meaningful games for them. So
yeah, we were talking about this team before Ben Bishop retired.
Exactly. And
yeah.
so we thought it was going to be Bishop and Nudobin, and now Nudobin is he playing in the American League right now? Like, I haven't even heard of him in a while.
Yes.
And then now they've got Holtby and Ottinger. And we knew Ottinger was good, but I don't think many of us expected that tandem to be as good as it's been. So it's just interesting to look back on our conversation about this team. But I think we were generally right that they're middle of the pack.
I ranked them slightly, like I had them 4 on my own list, and I know that my main reason between them and Minnesota was you can't put 2 goalies in the net.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's kind of come true. They have great goaltending, but it's like their best part about them is that they have multiple guys who can play in the net, but you only get one of them. So, it's a little tough, but that brings me to the second point about this team is don't count them out yet. This team, like we said in the previous rankings episode on them, they're in win now mode with their core, in quotes, and with some of the aging guys on this team, they're in win now mode. So look for them to make big moves, be one of the only team actually making big moves at this boring trade deadline. And Hudobin, there's a goaltender market right now. Expect for him to get traded for sure. Or one of them, Holtby, well, not Ottinger, don't trade him, you'd be crazy. But you know what I mean? One of them's getting traded, and I think they're going to make some big moves to try to make a push for the playoffs. Don't count them out from being that 4 or 3 spot yet.
Yeah,
definitely.
Be interesting to see for sure. Mm-hmm. The thing is, too, going into the season, and I don't want to spend too much time on Dallas because we got to keep this thing going here, but at the beginning of the season, I think we knew that Jason Robertson was good. From his rookie year, I don't think we realized that he was like point per game superstar good.
Dude, he's in that most underrated player in the league category now.
Yeah,
like not enough love for him.
Yeah.
Like Dallas is in a pretty nice spot where it's like really this season, like you've seen the turnover of this roster to the new core.
Changing of the guard.
Yeah, exactly. The changing of the guard, and with guys like Robertson and Hintz and Ottinger, Heiskanen is certainly in there too, and it sucks that for them that he's going to be out the rest of the year. But it's turned over to those guys, and then it's just wild to see Joe Pavelski, who just got a 1-year extension at a really nice cap hit of $5.5 million. That he's just playing unbelievable. Like he is one of the best guys tipping pucks in front of the net. And so Hintz, Pavelski, and Robertson again has just been so good for this team and have really drove the offense. So Dallas, can't count them out for sure. The Minnesota Wild, so number 4 currently right now in the Central, we had them at number 4 before the season started, and they're at 3. So again, we were pretty close with Minnesota. They have struggled lately though, guys. They had a really good start to the season, that first half, and it's really just the last stretch of games. Their last 10, they're 3-6-1. So Minnesota has kind of fallen a bit, but they're still going to be a playoff team. I think they're right in there. So Case, thoughts on the Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, they have struggled as of late, but I'm not worried about this team whatsoever, and for all of the same reasons as we've talked about them before. They have their identity now. They know what this team is. up and down the lineup, everyone is on the same page and plays the same type of physical, fast, quick transition game. Absolutely love watching Minnesota. I've never said that in my life. So it's kind of exciting. They've got analytically one of the best D-cores in the league for sure. There's like, you look at Money Puck, and every time you look at pairings, they're near the top in every category, up and down, like 1, 2, and 3. It's unbelievable. I love looking at their decor, and they're getting like, above average goaltending. So everything's going well for this team except for the last couple of games, and for that reason, I'm not really worried about them at all.
Yeah, talk about the goaltending. I mean, Cam Talbot was an all-star this year, which is, that's not nothing to be an all-star. I mean, so was Jack Campbell, and he's been a bit tough the last, few weeks, but he was an all-star, so that's saying something. And Kaapo Kähkönen behind him has been pretty good this season as well, and a good waiver pickup in fantasy, by the way, because he's very low-rostered, and Minnesota wins a shit ton. So good waiver pickup there. And same with Francouz. I meant to say that when we were talking about Colorado. That's another really good waiver pickup for goalies in fantasy. All I have to say about this team is like, yeah, we were pretty much bang on with our projections, and we might be by the end of the season, 3rd or 4th spot, sort of like at the top end of this division in terms of talent. And then, they just have to string together games and wins. And they've done that for the majority of the season. And yeah, they've been a bit cold recently, but, I'm with you, Case. Like, I believe in this team. I believe in their identity. Another guy who, maybe we thought was good, but didn't realize was superstar good was Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov. He's been incredible this year. And one thing I'll say about this team, and last thing I'll say about this team, I guess, is that if you're going to win, guys, win now, because next year already $12.7 million against the cap from Parisian Suter's buyout. The year after that, guys, $14.7 against the cap in buyout money.
You will drive the conversation to the buyout every time Minnesota
buyout money. Why would you do that?
Every single time.
Dude, last thing I want to say about this team, and probably most exciting thing for them, there's been a lot of talk in the media right now about teams like Ottawa and Vancouver and how their Bane and all the players are frustrated with all the trade talks, trade rumors. Vancouver, everyone's been talked about. It's just demoralizing. And for once, we have not heard a slew of rumors about which Minnesota defenseman's getting traded.
Yes.
And it's got to be refreshing for this team. It's like there's so much confidence in the team and who they have going forward. That's got to be a positive.
That's an excellent point, especially for a guy like Matt Dumba in particular, right? Like, remember how much his name was out there, like for the better part of 2 years. Honestly, it was crazy. That's a good segue into Billy Guerin's comments as well, because, Minnesota's been struggling as of late. I'm with you guys, not worried about this team. I think they're deep. They're in win now mode. I really like the Wild a lot. But Billy G basically said, like, I can't trade your way out of this. I believe in you guys in the room right now to turn it around, and they're on a bit of a slide here, but yeah, certainly have faith in this team. And you want to talk about guys who we didn't think would have as big of an impact as they've had. Matt Boldy, since he came in, has been like close to a point per game, I believe, and he's been absolutely fantastic in a small sample size, and has rejuvenated Kevin Fiala, I think, as well, whose name was kind of out there earlier in the year, and he was struggling a little bit, but very impressive to see a young guy like that help out a talented guy in Fiala. So yeah, we were pretty bang on with Minnesota and not worried about them at all, even though they've struggled over the last 10. Let's move on to the Chicago Blackhawks. So we had them at number 5, currently 7th in the Central, way out of the playoff race, of course, and we don't need to get into it, but it has been a nightmare of a season for this organization. Kyle Davidson was just named the general manager, and we'll see what direction they go in. So let's talk about the Blackhawks.
Yeah, so we were definitely way off on their rankings. This comes to my second swap that will fix our rankings, and it's Chicago and Nashville. That would do it. And Chicago, though, we were very wrong about them on the rankings, but we were very right in the fact that we talked about how much change had come to this team and how it's going to be hard to peg them in the season. We mentioned that at the beginning of the year. We were like, there's a lot of new guys, which means it could go anywhere for this team. They could be near the top and they could be near the bottom, because that's how things go when you add 6 or 7 pieces in one off season. Yeah,
crazy turnover for this team. And obviously the big one is, well, there are 2 big ones really, Seth Jones and Marc-Andre Fleury. Fleury, it seems like he's content to stay in Chicago for the rest of the season. There's been a million rumors about him moving at the deadline. So I think he's going to stay and maybe re-sign or retire, or who knows, sign somewhere else, who knows. But I think that's a fact that he's going to stay. And then Jones, he's there. He's your guy for the next however many years. And listen, Jones, we knew going into this season, got overpaid for one by a few $1,000,000 per year. I think that's fair to say. He's a good defenseman, but he's not worth whatever he makes, 9.5.
9.5, yep.
9.5. Yep. And so I will say, though, and I always kind of bring it back to fantasy, it's a good time to be an owner of Seth Jones, because he's the only guy who plays like 27 minutes a night for this team. He's always on the ice, and for fantasy, that's a good thing, because he's always in the play. But Chicago, you're right, Case, like we really didn't know where to peg them. We settled at 5, and looking back on it, it's not a horrible ranking, because they got Jonathan Toews back this year, and Patrick Kane has always been electric, and they made some big improvements like we just talked about, but they've also just had some disappointing performances this year. The guy I can think of right now is Dominic Kubalik, who has not been good enough. But on the other side of that, a guy who's been really good this year is Brandon Hagel, who's probably going to get moved at the deadline. So they've kind of just been a mixed bag of a team this season. And in a year where they've been in the media for all the wrong reasons, it just seems sort of fitting that this team is not as competitive as people thought they were going to be. It seems like almost a punishment for a team who you thought they'd be making their last push, but really they're already out of it. Yeah.
They're like, going into the season, there were 2 teams that it's like, okay, they've won their Stanley Cups and they've been kind of taking a step back for the last little while, kind of, trying to build things back up again. And that's Chicago and LA. And it's like, which one out of the 2 are going to kind of, get back into the playoffs and sort of, make a push again to try and get another Stanley Cup. But nothing has gone right for Chicago. I think they got maybe a little carried away after the playoff bubble in 2020 when they won a round and you sort of sit there and think like, okay, like maybe we're closer to getting back to the promised land than we originally thought. They go out, they make some big moves, spend a ton of money. Nothing has just really come together. And I just think for that organization, this season can't end fast enough. Honestly, it's been a tough go. And we'll see about next year for them. Maybe they could get back into sort of that middle of the pack and be in the race, which I could certainly see. So, it's been a tough year for the Hawks.
It seems like they haven't, or it seems like they've chosen the wrong direction, if I'm being honest. Like, if I were the GM of this team, I would sell Patrick Kane right now and get a king's ransom for him. Retain half of his contract, get the equivalent of 3 first-round picks, because Kane is still an elite producer, and just laugh all the way to the bank and rebuild, because you're not going to get anything for Toews. He hasn't been very good this season, and he's kind of been declining, which is a bit surprising because he was so good. What, Case? I think you're muted.
Trade Patrick Kane, set him free, please. First star of the league last year. He's on a crashing team. He should be winning Stanley Cups, more Stanley Cups. Get Patrick Kane on a sick line. Trade him.
Yes to all of that. Anyway, that's my piece.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, St. Louis Blues. We'll move on to them first. We've got 3 teams left, and then we're done with the Central. So St. Louis, number 6 is where we had them, and they are all the way up at number 2 in this division currently. St. Louis has been fantastic. Ville Husso has emerged as the starting goaltender for this team. I think that's fair to say. They look so deep offensively, and they can roll 4 lines, and the D's been really good as well. St. Louis looks like a very deep team right now, and to me, it would not be a shock if they went and won another Stanley Cup, and their second since 2019. So thoughts on the Blues?
Well, this is the second team in this division that I said they could be anywhere. And I had a tough time ranking them, and I had no clue where to put them. So I put them at 6 because I just had more certainty about most other teams other than Chicago. I don't think any of us really saw this resurgence of Kyrou Kyrou or Robertson. We knew that both of them had a high ceiling and that their time would come. We didn't think it would blow up so quick. And Ville Husso, that's weird. I think last year Chad was pointing out how he's bottom of the analytics, and if that was the case, it was just a fact. But now look at him. And we were also thinking they're like trading Vladimir Tarasenko, who's had a great return season, point per game player, 20 goal scorer, no surprise there. It's like a lot of good things happened for this team in a very uncertain season, and now they're a freaking contender again, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Like, I think going into this season, there was just so much uncertainty about the Blues, and maybe that factored into why we had them in the 6th spot. Also, just because,
it's like I just said that or something.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like we just didn't know, right? And the main one for me was Tarasenko. It was like, is he a player still? Is he good? And it turns out, yes, and he is. And they got Buchnevich, who they stole for Sammy Blais in a second. What a deal that was. And they've had guys just play well. Kyrou, like you mentioned, and David Perron's had another good season. He's been a factor for this team. Parayko maybe taking a little bit of a step back, but still a quality defender. They've got a ton of guys. And then, of course, like you guys have already just mentioned, Ville Husso has been the story, and there's maybe a bit of a goalie controversy going on here in St. Louis. And I think over the last, month or so, maybe 3 weeks, I've sort of concluded that when I'm talking about goalies, I have to frame my argument differently, because it's so hard to evaluate, like we talked about last episode. So I think from now on, guys, when I talk about goalies, I'm going to say who's good and bad right now, rather than who's good and bad period, because they flip-flop so easily. And you're right, Husso was a guy who was at the bottom of the league last year in analytics for goaltenders, and this year he's one of the very best. So they've had another great season, another great run, and they're trying to prove that 2019 wasn't a fluke. And they're big, tough, they're a playoff team. This is a team that we've talked about how, if they get into the playoffs, look out. And so we've seen a lot of that this season, and we were wrong a bit about them. We were right that there was some uncertainty, but we were wrong in putting them so low in our rankings.
I think the question with St. Louis is, can they get by Colorado? I think that is the number one question with this team. But there aren't a lot of holes. I would say the only thing that they would maybe need to do is add another top 4 defenseman. I think that's the only thing. And so, we've heard they're in on Ben Sherratt, even Chychrun a little bit and some other guys. So we'll see what they do. But, you mentioned Buchnevich, Brandon Saad, who we mentioned earlier on their case. He's been a great fit with the Blues as well. And young guys like Kyrou and Thomas stepping up, and looking at the last roster update in Chell 22. And I'm like, Jesus, Kyrou, an 87 overall overall, but it's justified. Like, that guy's had an unbelievable season. So not a lot of holes on this Blues team, but I think the number one question is, could they get by Colorado in a conference finals matchup? I think that's the number one question.
Depends if Kadri's in the lineup or suspended.
All right, so moving on from the Blues to the Nashville Predators. So we had Nashville all the way down at 7th, and they're currently in 4th in the Central Division. They've been a really nice surprise this season, guys. Talking about goaltenders again, UC Saros has been fantastic once again this season, and Nashville currently holding that first wild card spot. So let's talk about the Predators, and then we'll get on to the Coyotes to finish off.
Beep, 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 beep. You know what that is? That was the SOS that was sent out for elite goal scoring by the Nashville Predators for the last seven seasons, and it's finally been answered. We got it. Duchesne is back to being an elite goal scorer. Philip Forsberg has 30 goals already. Roman Josi is up there with Cale Makar in points as a defenseman. They finally got the elite goal scoring, the high-end goal scoring. Even Ryan Johansson, that we were pretty well given up on, is back to close to a point-per-game player. They've finally put it together, and they're putting up a good display of defense in front of incredible goaltending. That's the summary of this team, and you love to see it.
Case, your favorite coach in NHL history, John Hines, said today that, what's his name? Oh my God, this is embarrassing. Roman Josi. I couldn't think of his name off the top. I wanted to say UC Saros. John Hines.
He just said it.
I know.
You said Yosi's name.
You got that ass backwards. In the fact that John Hines is my least favorite coach.
No, I know that. Okay.
Josi is my favorite defenseman in the league, and you forgot his name and talked about John Hines. John Hines is in the room throwing darts at a dartboard, going, "That's the lineup," and it's working for him.
Listen, this was a disaster. Okay, like can I restart what this whole thing here, Case? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Case, your favorite coach, John Hines, it's meant to be a joke because I know you don't like him, said that Predators defenseman, noted good player, Roman Josi, got the name right, is the best defenseman in the NHL. He literally said that today. And so he's making a case for it this season. He's been fantastic, and so was the rest of this team.
I put a future on him in week 1 to get the Norris. So probably not going to happen because Cale Makar and points. Yeah. But Roman Josi's fucking good.
He is really good. And UC Saros is the other guy I wanted to talk about. This is another goaltender where, I was kind of wrong on, because you just look at him. He's the only goaltender who's under 6 feet tall in the NHL. First of all, red flag. Goalies are big now, unless you're really, really good, and Saros has been. And Remy has been trying to pry Saros off me in fantasy all season long because he's been incredible. And another guy for Nashville, too, has been Tanner Jeannot, who was in the Calder conversation for, the large portion of the first half of the season. So they've had some really nice surprises for this team, and we, along with everyone else, sort of counted them out at the start of the year, and now it's looking like they could be a playoff team, a good one at that.
The only 2 goalies I see could even remain in the conversation for Vezina right now is Saros and Shesterkin. And
I agree.
That's it.
Freddie Anderson has been that good.
He's been good.
I forgot about Freddie Anderson, but I'm still I think he's third in those talks.
Yeah.
I have to give a shout out to our good friend Gavin McCarthy, who we've had on the podcast. He's a goaltender and playing junior hockey in Sudbury right now with the Timmins Rock. And when I asked him who's his favorite goaltender on the podcast, he said UC Saros. And at the time, it was a little bit of a surprise, but not a surprise now. I mean, Saros is an elite goaltender. And like you alluded to, Chad, really impressive with how good he is because he is undersized. And so he has been just a workhorse for this team. And our concerns with this team have been resolved. The guys on the long-term contracts that have found their games again, the Duchesnes and the Johanssons in particular. And you could even throw Yossi in there. The last couple of seasons, a little bit off, but he's back to that Norris Trophy level defenseman. And then I think we were a little bit worried about the depth. Like, we didn't know how good Jeannot was going to be, but they've got guys like Cunnin and Cousins and Trennan and all these different guys that have been great as well. Nashville is a fun team to watch, and that's a great hockey market as well.
You want to know something, Harper? I had never heard the name Tanner Jeannot until about 20 games into this season when I picked him up in fantasy. I swear to God, I had never heard of his name. Like, he came out of nowhere for me. Was this a well-known player? Like,
No.
No.
I've been calling him Genois the whole time. So
yeah, well, I called him G-Not for the first week of the season.
I was saying Jeannot too, and it was actually THG, the hockey guy, who just kept talking about him in his reviews and being like, Jeannot was really starting to make a case for the Calder, and so anyway, immediately go into NHL 22, bump up his rating, and just started paying more attention to him. He's been great for sure, but no, not a well-known player coming into the season. Absolutely.
All right, we've talked about every NHL team in this division, so let's wrap this up, guys.
Not yet, Case. We got one more. And yes, that is the Arizona Coyotes. So we'll keep it tight with the Coyotes. They've been playing well lately. And Chad, we'll go to you to start. I know that was a tough finish the other night in Toronto. You were at that game. But the Coyotes, 6-5 in their last 11. They're playing well. And let's talk about the 8th place team in this division. No surprise there, but they've been playing well as of late.
The Coyotes just love playing spoiler, man.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say this team may be in the basement, but they might be having more fun than anyone in the league right now because they're absolutely spoiling all the top teams. They're spoiling everyone's Bet365. They're setting random records like Nick Schmaltz scoring 1 billion points in 2 games. You got, someone shit talks them in the media. Sean Avery says Clayton Keller's a bag of trash, and now he's over a point per game and blowing up. It's like everything that's going against them, they just like to spoil it. So, I mean, they're having fun other than the fact that they're in like the worst market in the world and they're going to be playing at a college rink next year.
Yeah, they're having fun because they've got Thick Richie doing keg stands in the ASU locker room after the game. But so when they came to Toronto, I went to that game, and it was like, okay, this should be a dub. It should be. We bet against them every time, and I've stopped doing that because every time they screw up my bets in parlays and whatnot. But you just know coming into Toronto that Nick Ritchie is going to have a night. That Boyd is going to have a night. Galchenyuk's going to have a night, etc. And so, they did, and Scott Wedgwood was a brick wall that night because you knew he was going to be. And, anyway, Arizona, we knew was going to be bad. At the start of the season, we had them in 8th. We already talked about that. They're tanking for a draft pick. They're going to probably sell more at the deadline, get more draft picks, and they're going to, in 3 to 5 years when they're playing in a college rink, they're going to have, some really good players, and it's going to be fun. But right now, they're no good, and they stink, in fact, except for when they play Toronto. And I wanted to talk about that game just briefly because in overtime, Jacob Chychrun, clear penalty. Just wanted to say that Connor McDavid right now is number 1 in the NHL in terms of penalties drawn, 41. Austin Matthews is tied for 310th in the NHL in terms of penalties drawn with 9.
Is that why he tried to shatter Dahlin's jaw the other night?
Probably.
It's a lot of pent-up anger.
If they called a penalty, maybe he wouldn't, have to do that. But
they called a penalty.
In the Arizona game, though, that was a clear penalty, and there wasn't a single one called all game. Not a single penalty. I wanted to look it up, and I forgot to do this, but I wanted to look up when the last time a game was played in the NHL where not a single call was made. But it's not completely fair to say that because there was one penalty in the game. It was a bench minor because the Leafs challenged an offside goal, and it didn't come back, so they got a bench minor for that. But the refs didn't actually go out of their way to call any penalties. So I just thought it was hilarious. And of course it was Arizona. Of course it was Galchenyuk who got on the board first. And this team is so infuriating, man. Arizona, that is, but also Toronto.
They love playing the spoiler role, as you guys mentioned, and I've heard so many times this season, like, Arizona and Team X, like whoever they're playing, they got Vejmelka tonight. Like Vejmelka's been fantastic. Like he just talk about a guy that like we knew nothing about. He's been great.
So from teams, we'll say 10 to 25, his save percentage is about an 880, and then from team 9 to 1, he's about 940.
Yeah, and it's funny, like when you.
That's not a true stat.
I was going to say, Harp,
I'm
I think
making
he's
that up.
Yeah, but it's funny when you look at his games, dude. Like he'll get ripped for 6 against like Buffalo or whatever, and no one bats an eye. But then he'll shut out Toronto, and it's like, oh my god, or like he'll shut out Colorado or something, and it's like,
yeah,
it's so weird because he's been like, if you average his numbers, he's been pretty much league average. But he's shown that he can be really, really good some games, and it's really weird. And same with Scott Wedgwood too. So,
no, for sure. And Vejmelka at this point, I think Arizona wants to keep him around. They got to have some players stick around for next season when they're playing in ASU's barn for sure. And Case, you did mention too, they're having a lot of fun right now, and that is true. They're a good Instagram follow if you ever want to check out the Coyotes, what they're posting and stuff. Like I saw, like they'll often like have videos of guys in the locker room after Schmaltz's 7-point night against the Senators. He was just like, thanks boys, let's get after it tonight. So they're basically going to be a college team next year, and so they they'll just have some fun, play spoiler, and go to some college parties afterwards. So the Coyotes are having fun. But there we go, guys. That wraps up the Central Division. We will be back next week with the Metropolitan Division to get into the Eastern Conference. And next Monday, when we release our episode, that is trade deadline day. So that is going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to that. So we will chat with you again next week. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details, and don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/boysinthebooth.